Alright, our goal now is to find the quotient to a division problem, or the answer to a division problem that involves a decimal point in one or more places. And so when we look at this problem, we have 15 and 36 hundredths divided by 5. Now we can go ahead and set this up into your division house. And the first thing that you want to make sure you do is that whichever number is written first is going to go inside the house. So 15.36 will go inside the house, and the 5 will get left outside of the house, which means we're going to be breaking 15 and 36 hundredths into 5 equal groups. Now, we of course want to put our steps off to the side, so we will run through those, and those of course are going to be divide, which I like to put above a line, so whenever I answer this I write something above this line. Multiply, then subtract, bring it on down, and take it on back. And some of you remember those steps: dad, mom, sister, brother, and you have a rover down here. Some of you remember, does McDonald's sell burger recipes? I like to just stick with a little rhythm: divide, multiply, then subtract, bring it on down, take it on back. So we're going to go from there, and of course we want to make sure that when we're working with decimal points especially, our numbers stay very, very nice and neat and everything is lined up, so that we end up with a number and a number, a number, a number, a decimal, number, 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 number. Since there's nothing out here, just a whole number of 5, we can easily split this into 5 groups using our steps. So our decimal point is just going to go straight up, and we're off with our steps. 5 into 0. So how many times does 5 fit into, not 0, I'm sorry, 5 into 1. 5 into 1 will be 0, because if I wear a size 5 shoe, I can't fit into a size 1. So we're going to put a 0 up here to hold our place. We've done the division step. 5 times 0 is 0. Subtract, bring down, and then take it on back. So now we're starting the whole process over. 5 into 15, which some of you probably did from the very start. You said, I can't get 5 into 1, so I'm going to do 5 into 15. That's fine too, as long as you remember your placeholder. But for the rest of us who went ahead and just followed the steps right on through, we're starting back to the top with 5 into our new number, 5 into 15. 5 fits into 15 3 times, because I can count by 5s, 5, 10, 15. And I've got another number lined up. 5 times 3, my multiply step, 15. Subtract, and bring down my next digit, which will be a 3. So now I'm starting all the way back to the top with my new number. 5 into 3. If I wear a size 5 shoe, I cannot fit into a size 3, so that's going to be a 0 up here. 5 times what I just wrote. 5 times 3 is 0. So I've divided, I've multiplied, now I'm subtracting. And bringing down my 6. And taking it on back to the top one last time. 5 into 36 will not work out perfectly, but I know that 5 times 7 will get me close. So 5 times 7 is 35. Subtract. And with decimals, I've told you guys before, you're not allowed to have a remainder. And so typically when you were doing this division problem with whole numbers, you would get here and you would just write R1 for a remainder of 1. But we cannot do that with decimals. So what we're going to do is do something called annexing a 0. So we're going to actually give ourselves a 0 down here to bring down, so that we can repeat this process one last time and it'll work out perfectly. So now when I divide 5 into 10, I get 2. 5 times 2 is 10, and it works out perfectly. And again, this last little step here, you're not going to run into this a whole lot, but this is called annexing a 0. We do have to add that on there and bring it down just so that our problem finishes out perfectly. And of course, if we want to check our work, since we know how to multiply decimals, we could take our 3 wholes and our 72 hundredths, our quotient up here, and we could multiply it by 5 to make sure that we ended up with 15.360 to check our work. So we could very easily run that through. 35, 1 more is 36, 0 and 3 more is 3, 5 times 3 is 15, and there's 3 digits after a decimal point, so I move over 3, and we end up with our inside number, so I know that I did my division correctly. And that is it. If we only have a decimal on the inside of the house, on our dividend. There are other problems where you will run into a decimal in more than one place, and so I have an example of that on this side. And when you go ahead and set your problem up here, whatever's written first goes inside. So you've got 11.48, and you've got 1.4 out here. Now, as we've talked about before, if I am breaking 11, you could just think of this as money, $11.48. If I'm breaking that up into 1.4 groups, that's kind of strange. And so we actually are not allowed to leave this decimal out here. What we're going to do before we start is we're going to move it over, and we're just going to treat this as not a 1.4. We're going to treat this divisor as just 14. So all I did was move that over. And the rule in math is that math is always fair. So if we have moved this decimal over 1 on the outside, we have to also move this decimal over 1. And so what that basically means is in the end, our decimal point will not go straight up from here. It'll go straight up here. Okay? We moved over 1 out here, so we have to move over 1 in here. And really, once you've done all that, this is just a straight normal division problem, just like the one we did on the other side. The only thing that makes this one a little trickier is that we don't necessarily know our 14 times table, because there's no such thing. We typically stop at 12. So you have a couple of different options once you get going with this problem. So let me just put our steps here real fast. Divide, multiply, then subtract. Bring it on down and take it on back. Alright, so 14 into 1. 14 is way too big to fit into 1, so I'm putting my placeholder here. You could go ahead and multiply and subtract and bring down and go from there, but ultimately you're going to be looking at 14 into 11. Well, that doesn't work either, because 14 is too big to fit into 11. So now we're going to look at 14 into 114 to get a digit right here. This is where I don't really know how many times 14 fits into 114. I can't say off the top of my head 14 times something that gets me close. So I have to use one of these two strategies on my thinking paper, and I've done them ahead of time to save us some time. But basically, you want to do what's called the add up strategy, where you just continually add up 14s until you figure out how many it takes you to get to close to 114. And when I do that on my thinking paper here, I can see that it took 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 14s got me to 112. So what that tells me is that 14 fits into 114 8 times without being too large. That's what this proves here. And this looks like a lot, but it's simple addition and it goes really, really fast. If you don't like the add-up strategy, you can always create a multiplication key. If you're someone who has a really good grasp of your basic multiplication facts, then this is a good strategy for you. You just simply start off 2 14s will give me this, times 3, times 4, times 5. And so basically you've got a key here. So you can tell that 14 times 8 gets you really close to the 114. So you would know that 14 fits into 114 8 times. All of this is just to get your division answer up here. Now you're ready to roll. 14 times 8, again, you can look back at the work you've already done. If you're doing the add-up strategy, it's 112. If you're doing the multiplication key, it took 8 of them to get you 112. So 14 times 8 is 112. Notice how I'm keeping all of my digits lined up. So now I'm ready to subtract. 114 minus 112 will give me just 2. Bring it on down. And then 14 into 28. I can go back to my add up strategy. It took 2 of them to get to 28. And I am done. And it worked out perfectly. That's how I know I'm done. So my quotient here would be 8 and 2/10. So keep your numbers lined up nicely and make sure you're taking the time to use the add up strategy or the multiplication key if you need to for whatever number is your divisor.